Good morning. Adam, I don't think this mic is on. Good morning, good morning. There we are, there we are. Good morning. On this 4th of July weekend, we gather always remembering and holding close in our hearts and moral core that we gather for worship and work. Some of us live in this area of the Nahantic and Mohegan people. We honor them especially on these national holidays when for too many generations, our true beginnings of this country are forgotten or whitewashed. And so we begin with that solemn acknowledgement as we gather joyfully in this place, as we do week after week, a touchstone for being brought together in joy, in challenge, in sorrow, and on this day, in pride of our country, no matter how flawed. We keep on. We find a way out of no way. And so welcome to All Souls, where all souls are welcome. You are joyfully called to worship. I invite you to join your voices in singing the very swingy African-American traditional, "Oh, I Woke Up This Morning." I invite you to rise in body and/or in spirit. This sanctuary. Would that our country was as harmonious, right? Those of you at home, I hope you heard that harmony. I hope you feel our greeting to you and our knowing that you are very much here with us. Welcome, welcome. We begin by sharing the peace, and so please turn to your neighbor, walk through, make a joyful noise. Peace be with you. I forgot to ask who is here this morning who may be visiting for the first time. So I apologize for that, but if you feel comfortable, raise your hand so we know to welcome you. Yes, Catherine and Archie, welcome. And for those of you online as well, if you feel comfortable, just indicate in the chat that you are in the online pews for the first time, and we will do our best to welcome you within and beyond our walls. Welcome. Perry.
Each Sunday, we light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith and a symbol of freedom. And so this morning, we invite up Evelyn to come and light the chalice. And as Evelyn lights the chalice, we say these words together. God speed the day when human blood shall cease to flow. In every clime be understood the claims of human siblinghood, and each return for evil good, not blow for blow. That day will come, all feuds to end, and change into a faithful friend each foe.
Those are, of course, the words of William Lloyd Garrison, the abolitionist, and the speech that we are going to be focusing on this morning from Frederick Douglass concludes with that poem, the longer version of So. And so on this 4th of July weekend, we light the peace candle with the words of the late, of blessed memory, Representative John Lewis, who said, we all just love him so much, right? Who said, "We all have to conquer the war within and understand that we are all children of God. Drop to your knees and pray for the soul of our country." And so with this peace candle, we do exactly that.
I invite the children who would like to come forward to come up for the story. So the story you're going to hear this morning was written by President Obama. Now let's see, how many of you children sitting here remember President Obama when he was president? And some of you might not be old enough to remember. That's hard to believe, right, that it was that long ago. But President Obama was actually our first black president, and he really upheld the values of our country and really appreciated what this country means and the ideals that it's supposed to hold for everyone. And so he wrote this book, actually, it's, as you can see, a letter to my daughters. He wrote it to his daughters, but he named these famous people that represented the ideals that we hold and things they accomplished to say to his daughters, these things are in you. And as he's saying that, he's also saying it to all of you. These things are in you, so see what they are. Have I told you lately how wonderful you are? How the sound of your feet running from afar brings dancing rhythms to my day. How you laugh and sunshine spills into the room.
Have I told you that you are creative? A woman named Georgia O'Keeffe moved to the desert and painted petals, bone, bark. She helped us see big beauty in what is small, the hardness of stone and the softness of leather.
Have I told you that you are smart, that you braid great ideas with imagination? A man named Albert Einstein turned pictures in his mind into giant advances in science, changing the world with energy and light.
Have I told you that you are brave? A man named Jackie Robinson played baseball and showed us all how to turn fear to respect and respect to love. He swung his bat with grace and strength of a lion and gave brave dreams to other dreamers.
Have I told you that you are a healer? Sitting Bull was a Sioux medicine man who healed broken hearts and broken promises. It is fine that we are different, he said. For peace, it is not necessary for eagles to be crows. Though he was put in prison, his spirit soared free on the plains, and his wisdom touched the generations.
Have I told you how important it is to honor others' sacrifices? A woman named Maya Lin designed the Vietnam Veterans Memorial to remember those who gave their lives in the war, and the Civil Rights Memorial to thank the many who fought for equality. Public spaces should be filled with art, she thought, so that we can walk amidst it and recalling the past and inspired to fix the future.
Have I told you that you are kind? A woman named Jane Addams fed the poor and helped them find jobs. She opened doors and gave people hope. She taught adults and invited children to play and laugh and let their spirits grow wide.
Have I told you that you are inspiring? A man named Cesar Chavez showed farm workers their own power when they felt that they had none. The people were poor, but worked hard and loved the land. Cesar picketed, prayed, and talked. The people listened to their hearts and marched for their sights. Si se puede, Cesar said. Yes, you can.
Have I told you to be proud to be American? Our first president, George Washington, believed in liberty and justice for all. His barefoot soldiers crossed wintry rivers, forging ever on. He helped make an idea into a new country, strong and true, a country of principles.
Have I told you that America is made up of people of every kind, people of all races, religions, and beliefs, people from the coastlines and the mountains, people who have made bright lights shine by sharing their unique gifts and giving us the courage to lift one another up, to keep up the fight, to work and build upon all that is good for our nation.
Have I told you that they are all a part of you? Have I told you that you are one of them and that you are the future? And have I told you that I love you?
I have to put more of this in here, so our chalice cannot be so pathetic. 4th of July, on 4th of July Sunday. There we go. All right. First things first. There we go. For those of you at home, you didn't hear me say that we needed to have this candle burning very bright on 4th of July Sunday. So the little interruption. So this Sunday morning, we're going to be focusing on Frederick Douglass's famous speech, the meaning of 4th of July to the Negro, as he named it. He offered this speech in 1852, and it is a longer speech. It is about 4,000 words, and so we don't have the time to hear all of it. But several years ago, in 2020, several of Douglass's descendants were filmed speaking parts of the speech, segments of the speech. And we thought that that would be a more powerful way for us to begin our own engagement. And because these descendants are young, they're teenagers, they're young adults, we thought that the kiddos would enjoy hearing them and seeing them. And so we begin this very brief peek into this moment by watching and listening to and hearing from Douglas's descendants. Adam.
Do I look there or look there? Okay.
Just like your, yeah.
Okay. My name is Alexa Ann Watson, and I am the great-great-great-granddaughter of
Frederick Douglass is my
I am the great-great-great-granddaughter of Frederick Douglass.
I am the great-great-great-grandchild.
I've been counting on my fingers since I was like 5.
Whenever you're ready, here we go.
This is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom.
Fellow citizens, I shall not presume to dwell at length on the associations that cluster about this day. The simple story of it is that 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects.
Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers were wise men, and if they did not go mad, they became restive under this treatment.
With brave men, there's always a remedy for oppression.
They succeeded, and today you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you, therefore, may properly celebrate this anniversary.
Fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence?
Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us?
I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary.
Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common.
The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me.
The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me.
This 4th of July is yours, not mine.
You may rejoice, I must mourn.
Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions.
At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed.
Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke.
For it is not light that is needed, but fire.
It is not the gentle shower, but thunder.
We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake.
The feeling of the nation must be quickened.
The conscience of the nation must be roused.
The propriety of the nation must be startled.
The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed.
And its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim.
To him, your celebration is a sham.
Your boasted liberty an unholy license.
Your national greatness, swelling vanity.
Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless.
Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence.
Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery.
Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings,
With all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him
Mere bombast.
Fraud.
deception,
Impiety.
and hypocrisy. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Allow me to say in conclusion, Notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country.
This speech was written almost 170 years ago, but this part of it is still extremely relevant, especially with today's protests.
I think that when people are oppressed, they feel silenced, and if someone feels silenced, they get angry. There are certain tactics that you need to use to get people to really hear your voice, and it's not always going to be just like a very calm discussion.
I think he's mostly talking to the people who are already on his side, but believe that they can still try to talk this out, or that things are still justifiable. I know a lot of people at the time were saying, and people now are still saying, that it's not as bad as it could be.
While the 4th of July probably does not feel the same to me as it does to others, I wouldn't say that it has no meaning, because it is the time when America as a country became free from another country. But I would say that it's not the time in which I gained my freedom.
He had a lot of hope, especially for his age. And I'm getting to the point in my life where I'm only 20 years old, but I'm exhausted. I have these thoughts like, will we ever really get to this point? Or is this really something that we should actually spend our time fighting for?
Somebody once said that pessimism is a tool of white oppression, and I think that's true. I think in many ways we are still slaves to the notion that it will never get better. But I think that there is hope, and I think it's important that we celebrate Black joy and Black life, and we remember that change is possible, change is probable, and that there's hope.
In, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that when we leave now. And I know you are going to hear more about the connections between all of these things and on our 4th of July. But we're also going to have some fun, because it's summer fun and games, right? So we're going to see how rainy it is out. We were supposed to play wiffle ball, but that might be adjusted with some indoor fun. So we'll see. So we're going to go discuss that if you can sing us out with Trees of the Field. Thanks.
I know how powerful that video is to watch. And so we are following it with a musical meditation that Bill will offer to us. In this speech, Douglas references Psalm 137, which the famous words, "By the waters of Babylon, there we laid down." And so thank you, Bill, for this musical meditation and segue. Thank you, Bill. What does the 4th of July mean to any one of us here gathered 247 years since the Declaration of Independence was signed? I read the Declaration of Independence every year in preparation of this service, and so I did it again this year. I read it, but this time I paired it, as you now well know, with Frederick Douglass's The Meaning of 4th of July for the Negro. And as I said, a speech that he offered in 1852, a disgraceful 15 years before emancipation for all enslaved people in the barely held together, hardly united states. Douglass was invited by the Ladies' Anti-Slavery Society of Rochester, New York. 600 people gathered in the newly built Corinthian Hall to hear him speak. Adam, if you would show the portrait of Frederick Douglass. This is a famous portrait that you see quite frequently of Douglass. I wanted his visage in the room as we consider what he said. Of note that he refused to speak on the holiday itself, and instead he spoke on July 5th, the day enslaved people in New York were emancipated 25 years earlier in 1827. So he was more honoring that anniversary than the 4th of July. Now, as you heard, early in the speech, Douglass expresses his respect for the founding fathers, and it seems as though the speech would be typical 4th of July fare. But no. Soon enough, he makes very clear that the subject of the speech would be slavery. But the speech is as much about the manner in which we deal with difficult subjects, such as slavery and racism. The question is as relevant today as it was in 1852. How do we reckon with our nation's central sin? How do we live up to the idea that is America? An idea that in a speech last week, President Biden said is an idea that we've never fully lived up to, but have never walked away from. Ironically, President Biden said as much 3 days ago after the Supreme Court set aside decades of precedent when they struck down affirmative action in college admissions. How do we then live up to the idea, the dream, the ideals of America so beautifully articulated by President Obama in the book we just heard? We begin by taking a hard and honest look at our history. Among Douglass's criticisms is this one. He says, America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false in the future. It's the end of his quote. And so we begin by unbinding ourselves to the false past, the partial history that was taught in our schools for generations. In that spirit, we're going to take a walk through Douglass's speech as it is among one of the most important in American history and seems to be gaining in importance these many generations since. So we begin. Like any skilled orator, Douglass knows his audience. He hears the inward moan without the moan finding audible expression. And so he heads it off and he says, I fancy I hear someone of my audience say, It is just in this circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists failed to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and rebuke less? Your cause would be much more likely to succeed. Now, you heard Douglas's descendants address this very thing, right? Can you imagine? Douglas answers his own question with another. He asks, what point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue? I submit, he says, where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. He then rips through slavery's brutality and likely rips through the hearts of all there gathered. I hope so. What then remains to be argued, he asks. And at this point, he unleashes his ire at the complicit church. The Christian theology perverted by those who twist biblical wisdom as sure as they would twist the neck of a human being held in bondage. He says, what then remains to be argued? Is it that slavery is not divine, that God did not establish it, that our doctors of divinity are mistaken? There is blasphemy in the thought. Who can reason on such a proposition? That can, may. I cannot. The time for such argument has passed, he said. He could not. He was done playing nice with even the sympathetic audience of the Ladies' Anti-Slavery Society. To agree to debate slavery, can you imagine? Just to hear it spoken out loud. To agree to debate slavery is to concede that there is some moral logic worth debating. He understood that a different approach was desperately needed, just as his descendants understood the same in 2020. He said, "For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the story, the whirlwind, the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced." In 2020, in the wake of George Floyd's murder, white folks, more than had been, were awakened from our complacent slumber. People of color, Black and Indigenous, were finally joined by millions of white people in the righteous fire of the soul. There was thunder, there was whirlwind, there was earthquake. Not nearly enough has this been sustained, however. And we know that with the inevitable backlash that follows any small progressive step forward. White folks especially, we retreat oftentimes as the ones arguing over the role of civil discourse, of two sides of issues that, like slavery, do not warrant debate or discussion, especially as fascist tactics ramp up nationally. Book ban, you all know this, book banning. Scapegoating immigrants and the LGBTQIA communities, fomenting distrust of the free press and the nation's institutions. Tragically, today's America is what Douglas described in 1852. false to the past, and false to the present. Exhibit A, and as has been named, the disillusion of affirmative action in college admissions. Hear the words of dissent from Supreme Court Justices Sotomayor and Brown-Jackson in response to the majority opinion on the aforementioned decision. From Justice Sotomayor, she wrote, "The majority's vision of race neutrality will entrench racial segregation in higher education because racial inequality will persist so long as it is ignored." And even more scathing are these words from Justice Brown-Jackson, who said, I love this, "With let them eat cake obliviousness today, the majority pulls the ripcord and announces color blindness for all by legal fiat. The best that can be said of the majority's perspective is that it proceeds ostrich-like from the hope that preventing consideration of race will end racism." Now, that decision, of course, came days before the nation celebrates Independence Day. And so what is the meaning of the 4th of July to marginalized communities today? Black communities being among them, of course. In 1852, Douglass said that the 4th of July is, and you heard his descendants repeat, the day reveals to the American slave the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your denunciation of tyrants' brass-fronted impudence. To him, impiety and hypocrisy, it is a thin veil to cover up crimes that would disgrace a nation of savages. Now, all this said, and despite all the damage that has been done this past week alone, we do not dare despair over the state of this country, of our country, as his descendant, that beautiful young man who said that pessimism is a tool of white supremacy. We dare not despair. Despite a string of devastating Supreme Court decisions that came down this week, we cannot give in to despair. In the words, again, of Representative Lewis, he said, "Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Do not become bitter or hostile. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. We will find a way to make a way out of no way. We will make a way out of no way." And remarkably, Douglass ends his speech by saying something quite similar. He says, "Notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. There are forces in operation that must inevitably work the downfall of slavery. I therefore leave off where I began," he said, "with hope. While drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles it contains, and the genius of American institutions, my spirit is also cheered by the obvious tendencies of the age." He goes on to describe the increasingly interconnected web of the global community, saying thoughts on one side of the Atlantic are distinctly heard on the other. And there is, of course, no time, much less 1852, has that been more true than today. And if I ever doubted that, I no longer do. At marches, we often chant, "The whole world is watching," right? Those words have probably left your lips at one time or another. The whole world is watching. And many of you know that I had the great privilege of visiting Italy back in April. I was taken aback by the number of people I met from all over the world who were keenly aware of the political goings-on in the United States. Sid and Lynette, you were just in Scotland. You're shaking your heads emphatically. You probably experienced the same. They were knowledgeable, and they wanted to talk. The day President Biden announced his re-election bid, a cab driver wanted to know how Kate and I felt about that, for example. I returned to my country with a stronger sense of responsibility, not only for our own good, but for the good of our siblings in the global community, with hope and without despair, with the understanding that the opposite of fear is freedom. As Lewis said, we keep on. And so on this 4th of July, may we not rest in paralyzing despair of our nation's sins, but rather resolve to live into the great promise of the document that started it all. In the words of the Declaration's final line, my favorite line of this document, with a firm resilience, with a firm reliance, not resilience, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. I'll say it again, and if you know it, say it with me. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, let's say it together, our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor. And so go forth with thunder in your hearts and souls, dear souls. Amen. Amen. Let us enter into a communion of silence and hold close all that we must do. We turn our hearts to a spirit of generosity and our offering. Let us say these words together as we prepare. We give to the work of all souls. Our work weaves the fabric of love called community, and to this end, we dedicate ourselves and this, our offering. The offering will be gratefully received.
given and all that you have sacrificed.
Thank you. Thank you. We now turn our attention to offer witness to each other's lives, the joy and the sorrow both that we hold in our hearts and carry with us. You may share what you are moving through and holding in a number of ways. One is, those of you who are here in person may do so in this book that's in the lobby. You may email belovedcommunity@allsouls.net, and if we get that by Friday, we'll share in the hall. Or you may, those of you in the online pews may write in the chat what you would like to have shared. I would discourage others in the chat not to respond, those double negatives trip you up every time. Don't respond so that I am able to quickly see what to share here in Unity Hall. Those of you here in Unity Hall are welcome now to come forward and light a candle of intention as you are so moved. So we open this circle and this time to bear witness. Every candle a story, right? Every candle a story. Let us prepare our hearts for what will be shared. Mary Drake shares that she is filled with joy for the love and support before and after her brother's difficult passing last Thursday. Their care eases her sorrow, she says, and thank you. Our sympathies and condolences to you, Mary. A big loss for your family. Danielle Gutowski-Mello and family shares that in the last month, Danielle's father was diagnosed with cancer. They decided to move back to Arizona. That is a lot. And they would appreciate our thoughts as they navigate the difficult months ahead. You have more than our thoughts. You have our support and our love and whatever we can do to make this feel less heavy for all of you, Danielle and Jim. John and Linda Sargent joyfully are looking forward to their daughter, Sarah, and her intended Brian's wedding next Saturday, July 8th, with great joy. Hooray for love. Maria Barice, just back from Pittsburgh and General Assembly. Yes, yay. Great, Pittsburgh does rock. It's a great city. Maria is very joyful that her niece and her husband are married. The concern is that we ask to pray for another family member that is in need, Lori. We will indeed do so. We will indeed do so. Okay. And from the online pews, we see you, and this is what was shared. Kyle Murray shares that he is deeply, deeply grateful to all the souls of all souls for cards and phone calls, transportation during his recovery from depression. He is happy to report that he is much improved, I think, to the great relief of everyone here. Julie Olson, who is in the online pews from Florida, asked that we hold in our hearts her daughter who is suffering with shingles, oh, so painful, and Neil Orkney, who is resting in a nursing home recovering. Julie, we're thinking of both Laura and Neil, of course. Rada Richmond Covey reminds us that grieving is an ongoing process and shares that she continues to mourn the death of her beloved husband, Bob Covey. She has never been through anything so difficult as this. I believe that with all of my heart, Rada. Our hearts are with you. Sandy Cohn would appreciate thoughts and prayers as she faces a significant challenge in her life, letting go, needing to release fear. It is a challenge that so many of us struggle with, Sandy, and so we are with you with great sympathy. And so let us prepare to enter into a communion of prayer and meditation. The prayer will be followed by a communion of silence.
As Carolyn said, this prayer will be followed by silence and meditation. Spirit of life and love, which grants us grace when in this broken and stressed world we need it most. Let us reach out to our beloved community, to those whose lives are difficult today. They may need our love and energy, so let us give that. In these days when so many live in fear, either because of skin color or their sexual orientation, their gender identity, or finding themselves pregnant, living in a state which tells them they must continue a child, which may be the result of a rape or a child who will die shortly after birth. This is a time to make good trouble. Begin with ourselves. Search within ourselves. And if we can find that we lift up our lives to find life's beauty, we can move our love and energy outward to encompass others in our beloved community. We can share in the joy of a new grandchild or a new job, or those who join us for the first time today. And our love and our energy can hold up those who are suffering, who need our energy if they have known to hold themselves up. The more we send our love outwards, the more it comes back to us. And we will continue to create a strong and loving congregation. Amen. And now, let us rise in body and or in spirit and sing our closing hymn, This Is My Song.
Carol will extinguish the chalice while we speak these words that we do flip to the next, Adam. These were flipped, yeah. Our service has ended, but our work is not yet done. May our spirits be renewed and our purpose resolved as we meet the challenges of the week. Our chalice flame is extinguished until once again ignited by the strength of our communion. Those of you in the online pews, place your hand on your hearts and reach out to the community you may be confident is beyond that screen. And may we do the same, reach out here in this hall. We go again, I remind you of John Lewis's words, who said, "We all have to conquer the war within and understand that we are all children of God, and so drop to your knees and pray for the soul of our country." drop to your knees and pray for the soul of our country. Go in peace and return again with great joy. Amen. Amen. I invite you to be seated for the postlude. One of a favorite song, America the Beautiful, and you will also be privy to some beautiful images of the best of our country. Amen. 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 Okay, there are a couple of things for you to know before you go. Next week is Sail Fest. It will be a beautiful day for My Lips to God's Ears. It's a big fundraiser for us. And we are in need of, I think, 3 more volunteers at our most important shift, which is the 8 to 10 o'clock shift. I think 40% of the money that we raise is during that shift. Andy Durr, you don't, no idea how much I wish you still lived around the corner. So I am on bended knee asking those of you who are here in Unity Hall in the online pews, if you could volunteer for that shift. And folks, I have to say, folks in Waterford, New London, Niantic, this side of the bridge, it's a little bit easier because you don't have to get out of the city in that traffic. So extra special weight upon the shoulders of the people who live close by. So there's that. Please fill that in. That's one. Next week, the activity for Summer Fun and Games is kickball. So those of you parents in the room know that that's what your kids are going to be doing. Office is closed, of course, on the 4th of July. The welcome table is over to my right, your left. There will be somebody there to greet you, those of you here for the first time, to learn a little bit about All Souls. And every summer, we usually have an empty vase on the chancel. And those of you who are fortunate enough to have gardens with flowers, you are invited to fill the community vase with the flowers that you have. So these are from my garden, for example, but we'll put a vase out next week, and remember to just bring a flower. And I think that's everything. There's going to be a conversation in about 5-10 minutes about the speech and the reflection that I just offered. So if you're interested in being part of that conversation, I think that we will probably just meet right here. There is no coffee hour. I think we really jumped the gun in clearing out the kitchen for the renovation project. But it looks like, we have just so you know, very quick update. We have the contract in hand. Our lawyer is taking a look, and after which we should be able to move rather quickly. I think that's everything. Please stay and visit with each other. It's so lovely to see Ellen and Andy here in the sanctuary. So I know many of you want to greet them. And that's it. Go in peace. Have a good holiday, a meaningful holiday, and we'll see you next week.